Okay, hi.
Hello.
I'm really grateful to you for joining me today. Rebuilding the Beast is a baby for me because it started off with me. It started off with my own journey of rebuilding myself back up. And I played in the NBA for a few years. I'm an NBA player. I got hurt, and my injury was a very rare one that they say that the probabilities of coming back from are really low. With that, it gave me this idea, and I just kept fighting. I never gave up, and along the way I kept meeting people, and people would hear my story and be inspired by it. And I was like, wow, like, what can I do with this story? What can I do with this journey? And I was like, wow, like, and people were like, yo, like, you should do something where you're speaking to people, because people like love to relate with you and they love your story. I was like, yeah, but it's bigger than me though. Like, I know that people are inspired by my story, but what about the people who don't know anything about recovering from an injury? What about other people who are just rebuilding through different parts of their lives? So that's how Rebuilding the Beast became a thing for, like, in terms of other people, because it started off as me rebuilding my own beast, and so I really just want to learn from other people and have people tell their stories, because I think it's so powerful when we can tell our own stories. I think it's really beautiful. People can learn from you. You can reflect on your journey, and it's just a way to create a community that way. So I'm really, really grateful that you agreed to do this with me. Thank you for joining me, Brian.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure. And I think rebuilding the beast, it's such an important, I mean, it just says it all in the name, isn't it? When I first heard it, I just thought I can just relate to that on so many levels.
So you are a beast yourself. I've seen your profile. I had to stalk you a little bit, and it was really cool to see the message that you have for people. Right, you are rebuilding your beast as well, and along the way, you're also taking people on the journey, and you're telling people and you're teaching people about IBD.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it. I have friends who have it. Um, my father suffers from a kind of it, and I feel like this will be very educational for me as well, and for everybody who is going to hear this, and for people who need to hear this. So thank you for joining me, and you got to remind me, or you got to not remind me, but you got to say it again so we can know how to say your name properly.
It's Bryony. Bryony Hopkins.
Bryony.
Yeah, it's
Bryony
Welsh.
Hopkins.
It's Welsh, actually.
Welch. And
Welsh.
you're calling in from London.
And I'm calling from London, yeah.
And you said that since you guys are in the lockdown, this is like a fun day out for you right now.
This is height of Saturday night entertainment, and I'm really not exaggerating when I say that.
Okay, so I mean, I'll tell you about me right now. I'm in Orlando in this hotel room, and I'm in quarantine because for me to join this league, this basketball league that I'm taking the next step in my recovery, and for me to join them, they're very draconian in their in their COVID protocols. They said I have to stay in quarantine for a week in this room, and then I can go play basketball. So this is a fun day out for sure for me. I'm just happy to talk to anybody, but I'm really, really excited to work on this. I'm excited to do this with you.
What day are you on of your quarantine?
This is day 5.
You're
Day
doing
5.
quite well.
This is like my workout space. This is my eating area right here. This is my sleeping area behind me.
And then you just stick your head out the window when you need some fresh air.
Yeah, yesterday, so the guy next to me is also in quarantine. So I was going crazy yesterday. And so I opened the door and I just put my chair at the door and I was just sitting there, just reading a book, just wanting to get some fresh air. And 20 minutes in, he opens his door and puts his chair out. He's like, oh, shoot, you had the same idea. Because we were both like, man, this is crazy. So I don't know how much video games you could play, but this is all part of it, right? I say this and I really want to paint the picture because I'm doing this because it's a part of the thing that I want to do. It's a part of my dream. Like, I want to go play basketball again. And I've worked so hard. It's been 3 years, almost 4, of me doing my rehab every day. That's my own journey and that's my story. And I love it, right? But I want to talk about you because that's why we're here. I want to know about you and your journey. So you've talked to us so much about Crohn's disease. I just would love to hear from you. What's been your journey with it? What is Crohn's disease?
Yeah. So Crohn's disease is a form of IBD, which is inflammatory bowel disease, which basically means that your immune system attacks your digestive system. So my immune system doesn't behave like a normal immune system, and it just continually sort of attacks my digestive system, unless I'm on medication, and sometimes they have to perform surgery, which is part of my journey, which I'll get onto. So it's a chronic illness. Once you're diagnosed with it, there is no cure. You just have to learn to manage it. You can get into really long spells of remission, which basically means you can be symptom free, but ultimately there's no cure. So obviously when you get the diagnosis, it's a huge thing in itself, because it's lifelong, and it's gonna, ultimately it does impact every element of your life. So for me, I was diagnosed when I was 4 years old. So I was really tiny, which is weird. I always say, I think it might have been a blessing in a strange way, because one, I don't know any different. And quite a lot of the time when you're diagnosed with a chronic illness, you can almost go through like a grieving process, because you kind of think about your life before your diagnosis and what your life is like after. Whereas I don't really have, for me anyway, I don't have that comparison. And also it's 100% made me the person that I am today. Like, it's made me so resilient and determined, and all of these traits that I'm really proud to have. So I went on off a bit of a tangent there, but yeah, I was diagnosed when I was really tiny.
That's actually great. You can just say it as it comes to, because this is just
Okay.
about being real and kind of how it comes to your heart. But there's a picture you posted where you were young with a tube up your nose.
Yeah.
Right. Just can you describe your early life with Crohn's? Like, I know it wasn't easy, having to deal with that being so young.
Yeah, it was really challenging, and actually sort of having a chronic illness means that it sort of, there are peaks and troughs, and but my sort of real troughs, like my real low points, were when I was younger. And that picture of when I had a tube up my nose, that was sort of part of some of the treatment I had to have. I had to basically go on this 12-week liquid diet where I didn't eat anything, and I was fed through a tube, and I was still, going to school, like trying to, do everything that, a young girl does. And it was really difficult. And I kind of always knew, like in my sort of early years, sort of building up to the age of 12, which is when I had my first major operation, that surgery was probably going to be something that I needed. Medication can only do so much, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And for me, it didn't. And I was going through so many treatments and so many side effects, and it wasn't obviously just impacting me, but it was impacting my brothers and, my parents. As a unit, we were all on this journey together. And so
Sorry to interrupt.
No, don't
What
worry.
would you said it's a lifelong thing, but at the same time you said you would have to have surgery. Is the surgery corrective? What would the surgery do?
So for me, my Crohn's was, so your Crohn's disease can impact any part of your digestive system. So anywhere from the mouth right down to the bottom. And for me, my Crohn's disease was particularly bad in my large colon, which is responsible for sort of absorbing water and salts, and obviously is actually a major organ. But my large intestine was just in absolute bits. It was so inflamed and ulcerated, and it was so unresponsive to medication that that was what was making my childhood so difficult. So for me, it was kind of got to the point, even at the age of 12 years old, that I couldn't carry on living with my large intestine still inside my body. And by that point, it sounds mad at only 12 years old, my quality of life was practically non-existent. I was in hospital more than I was at school. It was awful, to be honest. And when they said,
what is it? What's awful in this pig? I just want to paint the picture.
Yeah. So it's pain. It's you're not absorbing any nutrients. So your weight is, non-existent. So you're really physically weak. Everything, probably this is TMI, but everything is passing through you very quickly. So you spend a lot of time in the bathroom. You are also losing a lot of blood, and I mean a lot of blood. So yeah, these are the kind of symptoms, and there is still obviously still a taboo attached to talking about stuff like that. So it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about raising awareness about it. But yeah, those are the kind of symptoms. So pain, you know, you're not gaining any weight, really weak, physically weak, losing a lot of blood, not being able to be very far from the bathroom. Like it was completely debilitating. And you know, you can't really function in day-to-day life when that's kind of what you're having to deal with. And actually that is not for me, you know, I wanted to, you know, still hang out with my friends and be able to do stuff. And that I couldn't do any of those things when I still had my large intestine. So at 12 years old, they were like, okay, Bryony, I think we're going to have to remove your large intestine, but to remove your large intestine, you're going to have to live with something called a stoma bag, which is when they bring your intestine out into your stomach, and you have an ostomy bag attached to your stomach. And obviously that came with so many emotions as a 12-year-old girl, teenager, but at the same time I was just so desperate for a normal, you know, some sort of quality of life that didn't mean I was bound to the bathroom, that I was just like, yeah, do it, do what you need to do.
So when they take it, what's the purpose of that? To take it out?
So to take it out,
I say so because right now you don't have your intestines out. So
no.
what was the purpose of them?
Oh no,
it?
I don't have a large intestine now. I function without one.
Okay, so maybe explain a little more.
That.
Yeah, because I do want to know. I'm genuinely curious because I don't know anything about this, and like you said earlier, the large intestine, is it the large intestine that helps you digest the food?
Yeah, part of it. So your digestive system. Sorry, I'm probably not explaining this very well.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. But I ask a lot of questions.
No, it's good. Questions are good. So your large intestine is a major organ, but you can live without it. So for me, they could remove it, and I would have this stoma bag, which I had for a temporary amount of time. I had it for about 3 or 4 years as a teenager. And my quality of life, like, it was transformative, like in terms of, for me, my Crohn's had for want of a better phrase, eaten my large intestine away to the point where it was like there was nothing that could repair it. It had to come out. And once it was gone, things really massively started to change. But obviously then I was living with a stoma bag when I was 12 years old as a teenage girl. So even though my life had changed for the better, it came with a whole new set of challenges. And so you can live without a large intestine because your small intestine also absorbs a lot of your nutrients and, you know, can help you function normally. But yeah, it was that, I guess that was kind of, in terms of like my rebuilding the beast journey, that was definitely like a huge moment for me.
Tell me what this is like. Like, even me as a 30-year-old now, 31-year-old, still weird saying that. Even me as a 31-year-old, I feel like it's hard for me to imagine that right now. But this was your reality as a 12-year-old. And as you're going into your teenage years with this kind of trauma, what was this like emotionally? What were you dealing with?
I was just so determined to do everything that everyone else was doing. Like, I just wanted to go to school like everyone else. I just wanted to like go to the school discos. I wanted to go to sleepovers and school trips. And so I just got on with it, really. I mean, it was, you know, I was living with a lot of emotional trauma, and actually emotional trauma so I'm 28 now, and I have dealt with a lot of that trauma actually in recent years because I was so determined to sort of push through. And, you know, I'm now, like, I'm a journalist at the BBC now. I've achieved everything that I wanted to, and I have the career in media that I wanted to. And it's funny, like, looking back on it, I just really I rebuilt like that and pushed through it because I just wanted to live my best life. I wanted to do what everyone else was doing, and I didn't see why, just because I've got a chronic condition, why I should be any different.
You even talking about it, you're firing me up. You really are a beast. Like you were like, yeah, I had to keep going. And
Yeah.
this is what this is about. It's about the people who don't give up. And you know, sometimes life is shitty, and it gives us these crazy cards that we have to just play and figure out how to deal with it, and we have to keep moving. And I'm sure somebody hearing your story and hearing your journey will be inspired by the fact that you were just like, yo, this is what it is. I have to keep moving. I know it wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. I can't imagine what a 12-year-old, you know, would have to deal with at that time. But hearing you talk about it now, what was so obviously with it's affecting you going to school, it's affecting your life, your social life. Your family has to help you during this time. How do you move? Like you said, like, yeah, I'm determined to get back to normal living. So now you have your colon taken out.
Yeah.
What's the next step? What happens after this?
So for me, I had my colon taken out, and I had to live with something called a stoma bag, which has a massive stigma attached, and people often just think that, you know, old people have them. The actual fact is there are many, many young people that have to have them. And so sort of coming to terms with that, and you know, being a teenage girl is probably, I don't know many people who would say they'd go back to being a teenage girl. Like, it's a hard time where you're going through puberty, figuring out who you are, who you want to be. I was doing that, and I had a stoma bag. Like, it was almost, when I look back on it, I think sometimes I don't know how I did that, because I wasn't, you know, you're developing so much emotionally at that time and physically. And I was doing that whilst having a stoma bag. For me, that stoma bag was temporary, so I just had it for a few years, and then I had a reversal, which is basically when this is when it gets really technical. They attach the end of your small intestine to the tiny bit of the large intestine that they had left. So I've got a lot of abdominal scarring, but I don't have an external bag anymore. And yeah, it was a lot to deal with. And I think sort of when I'm going into my early 20s, it was really a journey for me to sort of learn to love my body, because essentially I'd had a body for my entire life that was like working against me. You know, every time that I was pushing through, but my body was not always doing what I wanted it to do, and to have your colon removed at that age.
Yeah, I see you talk about it all the time on your page. Sorry to keep going.
No,
I just think it's so inspiring.
I think that for me it was, you know, even when I used to wear a bikini sometimes when I was sort of maybe like 17 or 18, because all my girlfriends were doing that, and I was like, I really want to wear a bikini and I want to go to the beach and look amazing. But I had a massive abdominal scar, and I was like, well, I don't see anyone who looks like me. So I used to wear the bikini, but then like sit, you know, hunched over and covering myself. Whereas now I've got to the point where I will just strut my stuff, hold my head high, because I'm like, these scars are the reason that I'm talking to you today. It's the reason that I've achieved everything that I've achieved so far. And you know, why shouldn't I celebrate that? If anything,
That's one of the toughest things. It literally is one of the toughest things for anybody, is to accept their scars.
Yeah.
You know, for everybody. Like even me, for example, obviously I've had a fair share of surgeries, and so I have scars all over my knees, both of them. And sometimes when I play, I cover them, and it's something I'm like, maybe it means I'm damaged.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something wrong with me. And so, especially in my sport, where we have to be superhuman, so that you try to cover up your scars. But to be honest, I really came to this confirmation recently that the scars are actually a sign of that beast I'm talking about. They're a sign of the things that I survived. Like, you can't break me, is what this means. Like, you can do everything to hurt me, but you can't break me. And that's what it symbolizes to me. How did you, and what kind of work did you have to do to accept your scars? Obviously, I did a lot of therapy too, and I did a lot of I do a lot of reading. I'm always inside my own self, trying to understand myself, trying to, it's an active process that you have to go through. What was your work like?
100%. So I think for me, a lot of therapy for sure. And also, I think just things change when you just get older and you realize kind of what things are important. And I am very lucky that I've got like a very supportive partner. We've been together for a very long time. I have amazing friends. I've got amazing family. And sort of through those support networks, I was going on holiday with my friends, and they were like, why are you trying to cover your scar? What do you think is going to happen? Who do you think is looking at you?
Ooh, good question. What do you think is going to happen?
And I'm like, oh, I don't really have an answer for that, actually. And they'll be, what girls are like, they'll hype each other up, and my friends will be like, just wear that bikini, you look really fit, go and just go on the beach, do what. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And then once I sort of did it once and realized that no one was looking and no one really cared, apart from the only person who cared about it was me, it was kind of like, it was just completely liberating. And then I realized that the only person who was thinking about it and spending so much energy on it was me, whereas everyone else either, and if people were looking, it was just because they were curious or were thinking, oh wow, that's not a small scar, she must have been through something really big, and look at her now. So it's that comes down to mindset, which is exactly what this project, like you said, is all about, and so important, because that was my mindset, was shifting it. And that actually, I was like, if people want to look at it, then I'm proud, stare all you want, I really don't mind.
Shout out to PS. We got to give a quick shout out to your friends, because you got to, this journey is, you can't go through this journey by yourself. That's something I've realized. My friends have been huge for me during this process. They come through for me on days where I'm like, man, I don't know if I got, and they talk life into me, like, yo, what are you talking about? Do you know where you came from, what you've been through, all these things? And they hype me up. I'm like, yeah, I'm the shit. What I mean? So shout out to your friends. And if there's anybody that comes to mind that you want to give a shout out to, you can now.
Oh yes. There was 3 girls that I lived with at uni, and we called ourselves the Goldfinch Girls, because we lived on a road called Goldfinch Avenue, and we used to go on loads of holidays together. We haven't since COVID, but yeah, those are my girls. They would just make me feel, and even just being with them would make me feel good. And it's that, like you said, that makes all the difference.
Yeah, I love it. So I got some, I keep looking down because I got these questions written down. So I'm reading them to ask you. So you started a club. It's called the Bad Gut Club.
Yeah.
Love the name, by the way.
Thank you.
And you started this together with Lewis.
Yeah.
Can you give us a teaser about what you have planned for it?
Yeah. So this is a really exciting project, because obviously raising awareness about IBD is something that's really important to me, but obviously I can only talk about it from my experience, and there are so many different experiences that you can have for so many different reasons. And this is a community that I've set up with Lois that sort of encompasses all experiences. And the first thing that we're doing an event, which is really exciting. We've got loads of people who have IBD speaking from loads of different, experiences and perspectives. And so it's just about community, which I think is, something that you're doing so well, is having a place where you can go to find your people. And, even us just chatting now, we both get it. Like there's kind of a connection when you've been through something. And I hope for IBD, that's what this community will do.
So I always give this analogy, and I don't know if this has been the same for you, but this is kind of why I started this whole thing. So I had surgery and I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. You don't know how tall I am, but I'm 6'11", which is in meters, it's 211. And that's how tall I am in real life. But after I had surgery, I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. This is a whole identity change for me, right? So now I'm 4'11", 4 feet tall, just going through life. I say it all the time that God changed my perspective. literally changed my perspective on life. Now I'm seeing everything I'm seeing is different. But that was for a reason, because one of the things that was weird is like I won't say that I never noticed people in wheelchairs before, because I did, but I never noticed them as much as I did when I was in one. And I went out of my way. I was like, yo, I'm high-fiving people in wheelchairs. Like everywhere I go, I got to go through the wheelchair accessible line, right? Like, and everything is my experience is so different. And it really made me realize how tough it is. And so in this moment of difficulty, adversity, challenge, I really started to feel for this community. I really started to feel for people who were going through these kind of tough times. I say that for everything. And that's why I started this Rebuilding the Beast community. And for me, it's like God gave me this mountain so that I can show others that it can be moved. That's the quote that I use all the time. But that's also a thing that connects me to other people who have been through hard times. And I want to create this community for that. Is that kind of how you see your own journey of the things that you've been through in your own journey? Is that what connects you to other people who are going through some of the same stuff that you're going through?
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things I really believe is that there is such depth of connection when you're vulnerable. When you show your most vulnerable self and you talk openly from the heart, I genuinely believe that I forge really meaningful and deep connections with people because I am so open, and I am open on my platform. It means that automatically people feel like, whether they've been through similar experiences or not, people will connect with me because I am open and honest about my own experiences and journey. And I think also looking back to when I was a teenager, I had just had this major surgery. I was coming to terms with a new body and my scars, and social media wasn't a thing. I had a pen friend at the opposite side of England who I used to write letters to, and she was the only person I knew who'd been through the same thing as me. It was so isolating and it was so lonely, and I wanted to start my platform so that someone else going through that won't have to feel how I felt, because it was completely isolating. I felt like I was the only person in the world going through that.
Like you were speaking to my soul. That's exactly what I was going through. Well, there have been a couple of people who have had the injury. Nobody has fought through it to the point that I did to come back from it. And as I was going through it, I was like, man, like, who can I reach out to? Who's there to talk to me? Who's there to tell me that everything's going to be okay? Even if it's not to be everything's going to be okay, like, yo, like, I'm here with you, right? Other than my friends, but they don't know what I'm going through. Like, the people who went through it in the past, it would be so comforting. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, since I didn't have that, I can be that for somebody else. The same way I'm a firstborn, and I'm the older brother to four siblings. And nobody was there to pave the way for me, to tell me where to go and how to. I moved to America by myself. And I actually, originally, I'm from Nigeria. So I moved to America by myself, and I had to pave this way. And I was drafted to a team. I don't think this is a coincidence. The teams I played for in the NBA were the Warriors and the Trailblazers. And I feel like there was no coincidence in the way
that's
that
the sign for sure.
Yeah, you got to fight, and you're going to be a trailblazer. So it's just this idea that my fight is not for it's not for nothing. It's for people to be able to follow in this path. So I'm really grateful. If I haven't said it before, I'm really grateful that we're speaking today, because it's like it's confirmation for me. Like constantly, I'm hearing it in you and the things that you're doing. So I'm really proud. I really want you to keep going. There can't be enough people in this space.
No, definitely not. And I think one of the things, and you probably can relate to this as well, is that I feel like I never stop rebuilding the beast. I feel like every single day living with a chronic illness, I have to like dig a bit deeper. I have to, when you think that you can't dig any deeper, you somehow manage to, because there will always be new little obstacles to overcome. My Crohn's hasn't gone away, and there will be future obstacles as well. But I know now that, like, I've been through the darkness and come out the other side like multiple times. So people always ask me, in fact, someone asked me the other day, they're like, how do you stay positive when things are tough with your chronic illness? And I know that nothing lasts forever. I know that there are better days coming because I've done it multiple times, and I will do it again and everything will be all right. So you have to stay positive. You have to.
Absolutely. You can't let them win. What them being, you can't let those evil minions that jump in your head sometimes and say, you can't, or you're not good, or like they're always gonna come up. These challenges are gonna keep coming up through life. If it wasn't this, it'd be something else. And what you said is so powerful. Like you can't stop. You can't let them win. It's gonna pass eventually, you know. And to be honest, the best way I've heard it put is, life is going to be hard either way, right? It's hard if you stop, and it's hard if you keep going. But why would you stop and not get anything? You might as well keep going and get to that next place, that success, the achievement, the whatever, happiness, joy, it's on the other side. Why would you stop here in hell where you're suffering?
Yeah.
You know? So when you think about it that way, sometimes it's like, yo, I can't stop because I want to know the end of the story. I want to know how this ends. I want to know where this goes from here, you know?
Yeah, completely. And actually one of the sort of mindsets that really helped me and was, I used to spend a lot of my teens and my early 20s really worrying about what was going to happen in the future. Like, what if I have to have more surgery? What if I'm too ill to work? What if this? What if that? None of those things were based on evidence. They were all just worries that didn't really come to any fruition. So now I really harness the facts, and I actually think it's really helped me in this pandemic as well, is that I just have to take one day at a time. You know, none of us know what's going to happen in the future, and there's not much point worrying about what's happened in the past. Obviously therapy helps with that, dealing with stuff that's happened in the past, but like
I get it.
I just need to, I think there's a quote that's like, you don't have to climb the whole staircase. You just have to focus on the step in front of you. And so that's how I live my life now. And I really think that it's helped me achieve what I've achieved so far. You know, I'm a senior journalist at the BBC.
That was going to be my next question. That is a really big deal. Earlier when you mentioned it, I was like, let me sidestep it because I feel like I want to get there eventually, because that's a huge feat. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
So tell me about that. Tell me about, you know, getting your work life and getting to that position. That had to be, that having to work, that this probably comes with its own set of challenges when you have to work as well. How were you able to deal with that and climb to where you are now? If you can give me like a quick little story about your journey in work life so far?
Yeah, for sure. So I did drama at university, which basically just involved me dancing around and in a mental.
You can dance.
Pardon?
So you can dance.
Yeah, I can dance. Yeah. Not very good anymore, but so I got a job at the BBC sort of quite soon after I left university in my early 20s, and I just worked really hard and climbed the ranks, and just, even when my Crohn's got in the way, which it has multiple times, I just was always really, and it's not easy, but I was always really open about it. I just think communication is key. And if you're open and honest with your employer and the people that you're working with, then everyone is on the same page. And, you know, I work really hard. So, you know, when I'm there, I'm giving it 110%. And when I'm not there because I'm not well, I'm unwell. It's not my fault. It is what it is. So, again, it's just a mindset. I just really, when I'm able, I work as hard as I can. And if I'm unwell, I'm unwell. And I just have to accept that.
Tell me about communicating with your employer about having an illness. A lot of us don't know how that process is, or what do you even say?
I mean, it's not easy, and it's definitely something that I've had to like refine over time. But now I'll say I have Crohn's disease. It's a chronic, lifelong condition. It means that my immune system attacks my digestive system. This is how it impacts me. sometimes I look absolutely fine, but I'm feeling absolutely awful. And because that's the other thing, Crohn's is an invisible illness. You know, you wouldn't know to look at me that I have a chronic illness. So that's another reason it's super, super important to be open. And one of the things I have learned is that people and employers, obviously, you know, you're there to do a job and they want to get the best out of you, but ultimately they are people too, and they are far more compassionate than sometimes I think we think they are. And I just think, in my experience anyway, and I can only speak from my experience, being open and honest has always just led to really positive interactions, and it's never really caused an issue for me. Just being open and honest as much as you can.
So this is a pretty big deal, being a journalist for BBC. Yeah. Is this something was this always a dream for you to get to this point?
I definitely wanted to work in the media, and I wanted to tell stories, which is something that I do on my platform. And now I'm really lucky I can obviously do that at the BBC as well. Yeah, it definitely was. I really wanted to work in the media. So it is, and to be in the position that I am now, I'm, you know, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but you know, I do feel really proud of myself.
Please do. That's the thing. See, like, we have to be proud of ourselves, because when you go through this fight and you get to the other side of, you know, we have to blow our own trumpets, because like it's a big deal to be able to go through these life's challenges, life journey, and keep fighting to get to where you want to go. So that's a really, really big deal. I'm really proud of you. That's awesome. What kind of things do you talk about? Do you write about? Do you know?
So I write, and I also produce and present films. So I actually did a film about IBD, which was one of the first films the BBC had ever made about it, and it got millions of views overnight, which was just a huge accomplishment for me. And I had people emailing me from all over the world telling me that they'd seen it and that it had made a difference to them. So but I've also done work on, I've made a film about domestic abuse last year. I made a film about student mental health. So a lot of topics that I think are really important. And, you know, I'm really proud that I have the opportunity to tell other people's stories on such a big platform.
You're definitely an inspiration. You're the definition of, you get up and help the next person up. And that's so beautiful to me. So having a functioning gut is something that we all take for granted, right? And you know, if you don't have any issues with your gut, you don't really think about it. And Crohn's is an invisible illness, so people can't directly see it. But do you think that that's a good thing, or do you think that are there times where you wish that it was more visible?
That is a good question. When I was younger, I think I was pleased that it was invisible, because I didn't have to talk about it. And actually, considering I was diagnosed when I was 4 years old, I didn't start talking openly about my Crohn's disease until I was about 21. So that is, you know, a really, really long period of time and having been through everything I'd already gone through, to sit on that and not share it openly. And I think part of that was, well, there wasn't social media around, so I didn't know how many other people were living with it. I thought I was the only one. I thought that people wouldn't understand. And then sort of once I became, you know, through my friends who I live with at uni, and through meeting my partner who I met at uni, and becoming more open and learning to accept my body, once I sort of became more open about it, I realized that, I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. I realized that nobody cared, and that, you know, it is part of me, but it's not all of me. And I'm not actually sure if I'm actually answering your question, which was about whether I wish it was.
No. Just keep, like I said, you just keep talking. And it's not really about answering my questions. It's just about explaining your journey about this. So my questions are they're just prompts. Directions, but you just prompts to help you express your views on this whole thing. But my question was just more about, like, do you wish it was more visible? Because it's something that we don't think about. We can't see it. And so sometimes when you're telling your boss at work or you're telling friends or family, I'm really struggling with this, and they don't know, they can't really see what's inside of you. It's the same thing with me. A lot of times, like, I have trainers and people who they're very considerate and they're like, yo, let me know if you have issues. I'll give you a break. Right. But they can't see it. So they can't know that what I'm going through. Sometimes I'm pushing through when I'm not supposed to be. And it's all based on me and my, do you wish sometimes that it was more visible? Do you feel like it would help if it was more visible?
I think, yes, in some way, in some scenarios, yes, it would help, because you have to, again, you have to get really good at communicating and also describing. Like I have learned that I have to sort of describe how I feel in a way that people will understand. So if I say I'm really fatigued, if you haven't experienced the level of fatigue that chronic illness can give you, it is hard to understand what that feels like, because then you might just say, oh, well, you know, I get tired too, where they're not the same thing. So I've learned to articulate it in a way that someone else might be able to understand. So, you know, when I'm fatigued, I am so tired, I can't string a sentence together, I can't really process information very well, can't really keep my eyes open, things that sort of people can understand. So I think because it's not invisible, it does put the onus on you, like you said, to have to communicate and always explain how you feel, which actually can be quite exhausting sometimes. And I guess if it was more visible, the less of the onus would be on us to have to explain how we feel all the time, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. My favorite question, and oh, before we even get to that question, one of the things I also wanted to know is, in terms of, you know, you said you were in a relationship and you have a partner. How does that, what kind of adjustments do you have to make in that regard, in letting somebody in? Something as, it's definitely, even with my injury, it's been so tough and it's taken a lot of mental energy and focus. It's been hard to even form bonds with people for me, because it's like, I don't, sometimes people complain about stuff. I'm like, yo, I don't have the mental energy to even deal with you right now. You know what I mean? And people, they don't understand that I don't have the patience sometimes. And it's been tough. So it's something that I'm dealing with as well right now. What has been your experience, and how have you made adjustments to deal with having a relationship?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it doesn't probably get talked about enough, because there is, you know, one, it takes a lot when you're like first dating someone to figure out what you want to say and how you want to explain it, and all of that. But then obviously once you've got into a long-term relationship, so I've been with Josh, my partner, for nearly 8 years now. And sort of before I met him at university, but before I met him, I'd had relationships, but I never was confident enough to talk about what I'd been through. So, you know, they would even see my scars and I would just like brush it away or not really explain the full story because I didn't feel comfortable. And then when I met Josh, and it probably was, again, this is actually did really help me sort of come to terms with it and learn to love myself and my body. I just told him outright, and afterwards I was like, oh, that's never happened before. I've never felt comfortable enough to talk about it that openly. And then obviously as the relationship goes on, there are different considerations. You know, my health is really up and down. It impacts both of us, and we just have to like continually talk about it. But it's hard, and I guess you just have to. Sounds cliche because I think Josh is my person now, so I feel like we've got a good groove, but it definitely wasn't like that for a really long time before I met him. So yeah, there are definitely extra considerations, but I think once you sort of find someone that you feel comfortable with, it feels easier.
I guess, yeah, that's a really good point. Is even the way you said it about, you were so comfortable that you were just like, yo, I just said it to him, and I've never done this before. This is weird. Maybe that's also a sign that this person is your person. But for the people who could possibly hear this, that are the partners,
Yeah.
that maybe the people who are dealing with Crohn's or who are dealing with an illness, maybe they're not so comfortable talking about it, or maybe they have talked about it, but they're not so comfortable telling them about like what they're really dealing with. What can the partners do to make them feel more comfortable?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it probably sounds counterintuitive, but space, but with the knowledge that your partner knows that they can come to you at any time. So you might say, you might not feel comfortable about talking about this right now, but you know that I'm here and I'm here to understand. And I think, when me and Josh first got together, he didn't know what Crohn's disease was, and he had a lot of questions, and it was just sort of finding that like comfort level for both of us, that he could ask his questions and I felt comfortable enough to answer them. Or if I didn't want to answer it right then, I'd say, I don't really want to talk about this right now. Can we park this for another time? So for the partners, I think reassurance coupled with space, and that it's not going to be something that you just figure out and learn straight away. It is a process and a journey that is going to take time. So time as well. And also just ask sometimes. I think ask your partner, what they are comfortable with and what they happy to talk about. And yeah, it definitely takes time.
Are there any, this is where we're here on this relationship advice part of the segment.
Yeah.
Are there any gifts? Are there any things that your partner has done that you really appreciated that were like this is really what I needed at this time? Was there a vacation? Was there something that y'all did that really helped you in the moment? There's like, oh, this helped me get through this tough time. This helped me get my mind off things.
There's just been so many. There's been so many of those, and he's very
Shout out to Josh.
I know he's
Josh,
a good,
right? Is that saying right?
Yeah, Josh. Yeah.
Yes. Way to go, Josh.
He's a good man.
Yes.
This sounds really small, but this is something that he does all the time, which just makes a massive difference. So I still get quite a lot of stomach pain. That's a very common symptom of my Crohn's, and he will always fill up my hot water bottle, and because that's like just something really small that just helps my pain. And sometimes I haven't even said I'm in pain, and he'll have filled it up for me, which I just think is amazing. So it's those kind of little things. Or if I'm feeling, he can tell I'm tired, he'll make dinner. It just little things.
Moral of the story is everybody go get you a Josh, okay? Get your own Josh.
When I come off this call, he'll be really pleased to know that he took up a large segment of this chat.
No, that's awesome. We got to give love to the people who show love to us.
Yeah.
One of the things I have learned along my own journey as well is, man, there is really, you can't show enough love. You can't give people enough love. You can't give people their roses enough right now. Not when they're about to be gone, not when, let's do it now while they're here supporting us. Because the more I realize this, I realize that once you spread light to people, those people take that light and they take that light and it becomes like part of their own light. It illuminates their own light, yeah. And they also take theirs and do it for other people. So I really love this process. I love that we're sharing this. I love that we're talking about it. I love that you have somebody in your corner that's really there for you and supporting you through this journey. I'm really happy for you. But this is now my favorite question.
Okay. I don't know why. Why do I feel nervous about your favorite question? I want to give a really good answer.
No, the question is, it's really the question is really the purpose of this whole podcast. Imagine you were to talk to young Bree about the challenges that she was going to face ahead, or about the life that she was going to be living ahead. That she was going to be a BBC writer, or a BBC journalist rather. What would be your advice? What advice would you give your younger self?
I would tell her that she was going to achieve more than she ever thought possible, given everything that was going on. I would tell her that she doesn't have to let me think of the right way to phrase this. It's funny. I've been asked this question before, and it makes me feel really emotional. And I think there's something quite poignant about thinking about your past self. I would tell her that she would achieve more than she thought possible, given everything that was going on. I would tell her that she doesn't need to worry about what people think of her based on the fact that she's got a chronic condition, because it is part of her, but it's not all of her. She's also so much more than that. And I would tell her that everything that she's gone through would make her who she is today. You know, I really can't stress it enough. I'm so proud of so many of the characteristics I think that I have, in terms of, you know, like being vulnerable and forming meaningful connections with people, and you know, sharing my story as a catalyst to help other people. I'm so proud of all of that. And I don't think younger Bryony would have thought that she would even be able to talk about Crohn's openly, let alone sit on a podcast with someone like yourself and talk about it this openly. Like, that in itself, she never would have thought would be possible.
I say it all the time right now. I say, I am much stronger now than I ever thought that I was. There is something about the journey that brings out they bring something out of you. And if I were to talk to my younger self, it would be the same thing. Is you just don't know. You have no idea who you are. All right. Like, you think you're this shy kid that does this. Like, no, you have no idea. And these things, they're happening, they're actually gonna happen for you. You're gonna think they're happening to you, but they're gonna happen for you, because as you fight through it, you get stronger, you get better, you get wiser, and you're going to be able to take that and help, and it's going to be part of your legacy and your destiny. So, man, I'm so grateful. I'm rooting for you. This is like, I'm so grateful. You're such an amazing person. I can already feel it, and I'm going to be following your journey. And if anybody wants to follow you and follow your journey, follow the projects that you're working on, where can we find them?
So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Bryony E. Hopkins. And I would love to see you there. And thank you so much. Like, I really, really appreciate you inviting me. You know, it's a massive privilege. And when you dropped into my DMs, I was like, oh, yes. And I think what you're doing with Rebuilding the Beast is absolutely incredible. Like, and I think the thing is that with projects like yours, you will be helping so many more people than you even realize. So many more people.
It's the thing that I realized as I started to share my story on Instagram. I would have people reaching out to me that had nothing to do with basketball. They people that had never even watched me play. Like, I haven't played in 4 years. People are still following me and rooting for me and saying, yo, you're inspiring me as I'm going through my own struggles. But it's people who somebody's dealing with a heartbreak. Somebody's dealing with loss of a loved one. It has nothing to do with me working back to get back to basketball. But that spirit is something that translates, that other people can feel. And man, I want to highlight other people. And when I see you and I see you talking and I see you reaching out to people and being vulnerable on Instagram, a platform that's usually curated and people are like showing the best sides in themselves, that's a lot of times fake, because nobody is the best side of themselves all the time. It's just, to me, it's like I just feel connected to you on even just looking at your Instagram. So I'm happy that we finally got to connect in person. I can't wait to meet Josh, because I feel like I got a lot to learn. But you know, hopefully someday I get to come to London, or if you ever come to the United States, you can reach out and let me know. It would be great to have you guys, to host you guys, and hopefully you can come to a game after I'm done.
That would be amazing.
Yes.
I've never seen an NBA game.
Yes. I hope I can be your first. I can host you and Josh, and I could be your first NBA game. Okay. So I'm working. I got extra motivation now.
Yeah. We just need to be able to travel to the US, and then we'll be right there.
Yes. Well, yeah, we got a little bit of a situation right now we got to handle. But in the middle of the pandemic, are you still able to work during this time? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, I'm working from home, so we go out filming and stuff. Obviously all COVID secure, but yeah, we just work fully from home.
how do we find your articles and the things in the movies or the documentaries that you've been making?
So if you, this is going to sound a bit odd, if you Google my name, my portfolio comes up, and then you can see all of my films and documentaries and articles.
Google me, yes. Hey, I've always wanted to be that person that said somebody pissed me off. I'm like, hey, Google me, all right?
I actually can't believe that I just said that. I think I'm a bit embarrassed.
No, that's
hey,
awesome.
Google me.
Hey, Google her, all right?
But yeah, if you ever come to London, please do let me know, because we know all the good spots.
Yes. I was in Germany, and I never even understood. I never knew that I would enjoy a place other than the place where I'm living right now so much. A place where I'm living now, being in the United States. But when I think about it, I grew up in Nigeria. I moved to the US, and it's a different place, and I love it so much. So when I went to Germany, it's only right that I will also love another place. So if I come to London, if I come to the UK, I will for sure be hitting you guys up.
Please do.
Thank you for spending your afternoon with me and giving me some time. I really appreciate it. I enjoy your day, and thank you again.
Thank you, and good luck with everything.